And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, hello and welcome along to another Week 506 podcast with myself, Matt Leach, who's slightly nervy. I'll get on to that in a second. And the beautiful Doug Allen. Hair looks good, dude. Hair looks on point.
Yeah, it's growing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's
Nice.
good to be here. How are you doing? How are you getting on?
Good, mate. Yeah, we were talking off camera, mate, off pod. I'm up a mountain, living the eco life with the buzz of a generator in the background.
Diesel-powered generator. Putting, as much pollution into the air as as a truck.
Because like my mate that we're working on this house together and everything, and on the land, he's gone off for like a month. He's got some work somewhere else, so I'm just sort of tidging and tadging around here. And much as he's an eco warrior, I am not. So after about 37 to 38 minutes of him being gone, I started running the generator because I can't get on to work, man.
With that lovely dull drone in the background.
I've got the jelly running. Yeah, very funny. So we should introduce our guests as well. I'll start with a reoccurring friend of the pod, Matt Mabe from the 100th Bomb Group Foundation. How are you doing, Matty?
Great. Hope you guys are well.
Yeah, good to see you, Matt.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Good to see you. And then we also have a special guest, as this is tending to turn into a Masters of the Air Appreciation Society podcast. We have George Webster. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. I noticed in your IMDb, George.
That's always a terrible start.
Yeah, did you do it, or is it a fan, or is it an agent? Or the little
I think it's a little bit of all. I think the IMDb is a bit of one of those, like, it's a free agent. You can get anything in there or on there. But I'd say it's like 90% accurate.
So is it 90 to 100% accurate that you're 6'2"?
That is true.
Right.
Depending on the role that I'm going for. Sometimes you're like, this to be small, I'm 6 foot. Or if he's tall, I'll stretch it to 6'3". Right. I'm probably 1.5.
Right. So what we have here is an actor who is 6'2" and very handsome. So
just like every other Masters cast member, essentially.
Exactly. The jealous part of me straight away thought, well, you might be handsome and 6'2", but I'm handsome and Doug's 6'3". But none of those things are true anymore. I've totally shrunk and I'm no longer handsome. So
it's coming for me. I can feel myself shrinking today. It's happening. It catches us all up.
You're shriveling away. So we'll get straight on to your role in Masters of the Air, and then we'll hook back and we'll talk about casting and filming and all the good stuff. But you played Lieutenant, I have to get it right, I have to get it American, Lieutenant Glenn Dye, who's a pilot. We just start there. So tell us what you know and what you learned about this man before you played him, as you were playing him, since then as well.
Yeah, I mean, an extraordinary guy. And I suppose the way that it was sold to me when the part was given to me was the story about him contracting VD on his way over, as a sort of like, just surmises him as a person. It's a funny anecdote. But the fact that he was the first person to do the tour of duty then and fly back was it was an extraordinary thing to learn about the guy, and it's an easy thing to sort of maybe link those two things together. And I actually got in touch with John Lucky Luckadoo, who was is still alive. He was Glenn's co-pilot for most of his missions. And he actually said in an email to me that one of the reasons that Glenn was so dedicated to being the first one to do it and just put his hand up for every mission was because of the embarrassment of arriving late to the war. That he sort of arrived like, right, that's it. I've got to make up for this. And so he just kept going up and just smashed out the park and was by all accounts just this extraordinary airman and sort of carried on planes throughout his life. And
So was
Go
he
on.
the first pilot to complete his missions then and go home in the bomber squadrons?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm sure Matt, who's above me in this thing, correct me if I'm wrong.
For
but
the 100th, it was. There were other groups that finished first, but for the 100th, he was the first. And I guess what's notable is he did it in like a very short amount of time, within like a series of weeks. Practically got there at the end of June and was done in September. So
was that anything to do with trying to get more penicillin or?
Yeah, but how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that? This is a question for Matt, maybe. Like, how does that happen? Like, surely you just, if you're a part of a bomber crew, you just get the missions you get. But was there options then? Were you actually given a choice to go up on extra missions if you wanted to? Because it sounds like he had an opportunity to get it out of the way really, really super quick. So what?
Yeah, I think it varies. I don't think you really had a choice, but I think early in the war, in those circumstances, if you were the guy that's like, "Hey, I've got a trusted reputation. I'm willing to go again tomorrow," they're like, "Okay, sure, we'll put you in the formation." And I mean, he had said like, "Hey, he didn't take any leave where his guys got a pass to go to London. He nixed that. He was just ready to go nonstop."
Wow. And did you learn about this, George, before? So you got, because we speak to a lot of other cast members, and even on our show, obviously we had the same thing. We had an information pack about the character we were playing. Sometimes, like with mine, it was just like literally a photo and a couple of pieces of information. It wasn't a great deal. Did you get a good amount of information from the production about
it sort of came in dribs and drabs. There was stuff on the 100th website about Glenn that was a good starting point, and then I went on my own sort of investigations through Facebook to try and find members of his family, people who knew him, and that sort of failed until somebody put me in touch with John Lucky. And then throughout production, things would sort of come in and we'd find out like what hometown he was in and how that would change the accent. And it came through that way. But most of my stuff, I'd say, I took from my email exchanges with Lucky. He was so open and honest and just with little gems in there about, it's one of those things, Glenn isn't a massive part of the show, as you know, like as is the nature of these sorts of shows.
Yeah.
So you don't want to paint him in too broad a stroke, but you sort of have to hang your actor's hat on some key pieces of information rather than trying to dig too deep and getting too into it and being like, oh my God, what, did he have a lisp? Like, like the important thing is that he was a really dedicated pilot. Everybody respected him. John said Lucky said he was quite quiet and unassuming and just sort of kept himself to himself. And so little things like that sort of informed on a scene by scene basis, just having that one thing to go, okay, so in this scene, everyone's smoking and drinking and having a lovely time. It would make sense for Glenn to be at the bar, maybe chatting to this girl, having a cigarette, like educating himself a bit. So that those things, sort of, it was a mishmash of lots of different strands of information.
And is that what you hung the hat on character-wise? Was that he was slightly on the back foot, quiet, unassuming, focused type of character?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm trying to think. Obviously, it was like 3 years ago now. I'm sure there's other stuff. I should have read back with the emails of Lucky, really. Yeah, I'd say it was. It probably was that sort of thing. I think Glenn was a bit older as well, if I remember rightly, than a lot of the other people in the 100th or in his crew. And I think Lucky said that his nickname was like Granddad or something, or Grandpa. And so again,
24.
Exactly.
How old was he at the time?
I don't know. I can't remember.
One of you guys said it. He was 24.
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh my!
He's called Granddad. Jesus.
Yeah, he's grandpa at that time, and And again, that gives you a position as an actor to go from, of like not getting involved in all the, all the lads are jumping around hugging each other. Like I sort of position there's a little bit more of like in the party scene where he's flown all the missions and I'm coming through and they were sort of slapping my face. It's sort of like, yeah, all right, rather than being part of it, who knows? But that was sort of just a direction and a heading to take. And I was also, out of all the actors that I was working with, by far the oldest one. I'm 33 now. I was 29 when we started shooting. And a lot of the actors were 21, 22. So I was grandpa anyway. So it was a pretty easy start to take.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
There's something of the Captain Miller in Saving Private Ryan about it. The fact that he's sort of focused on just getting home, just focused on getting through it. Like all the other guys are kind of pumped up testosterone, and Miller's just this kind of like quiet, unassuming guy that's just getting
really good
through
spot
it as
that.
quick as he can, as I just want to get home to my wife type of thing. About that character.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also, there was maybe even a conscious wanky actor thing of feeling, in order for Glenn to stand out, is to separate him from the instant things you want to do as an actress. Join in the banter, join in the scene, join in the thing, taking the step back and having that contrast with yourself, I think was very useful for me, at least, in order to sort of step into the shadow of the character, I think.
I love that phrase. I love the phrase wanky actor. Wanky actor.
Yeah.
I think I hear
I'm
that
sure you guys have met them.
every single podcast guest at one point either says the words, I don't want to be a wanky actor, or wanky stuff.
Yeah.
I think even Sawyer Spielberg said it, and he's like, from Long Island. He managed
I know,
to phrase, I don't want to be a wanky actor.
You just never want to say the phrase as an actor. It's just those three words, just whatever comes after that, people are going to go on then. What you got?
Exactly.
Well, I've got a question for you, Doug. Just this is a bit of a sidebar. What is the difference between something good when you approach a role, and where does it become wanky actor? Sorry, I'm going off on one here. What is wank? What does it mean? What does it mean to you, George? Like, what's the difference between
Doug? You go
doing something
first.
well? I'm going with Doug. I'm going to go with Doug. I'm circling back, but my mind's going funny here.
Well, I think that an image springs into mind of something that I saw on YouTube that was on a film with Jake Gyllenhaal, where he plays a cop.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen. I don't know what the film is called, but they end up being in a shootout, and it's him and his buddy, and they're both getting killed or something at the end. But one of the things that they did, I saw and read an interview with him, and he said, we got really into our role. He said, one of the things we did, we actually got one of the, we went training with the cops, did ride-alongs and all this stuff. And we actually got, one of the cops to shoot us with a taser.
Did you? Or did he
straight out?
That
is wanky actor. Like, I'm sorry, like cops don't go round firing tasers at each other, even in training, to know what it feels like. But he wanted to do it, and that's straight out of Sude's Corner in Private Eye. It's that kind of thing. I think it's that sort of. You think it's commitment, but actually it's not going to offer anything to your role. But it's a bit. That to me was kind of that stands out as a story that kind of crosses the line. And another one is when, I know it's especially if you come from south of England, to keep an American accent's quite hard, isn't it, George? I don't know if you experienced. I know you're from the south, right, from Brighton or something.
Yeah.
Because we got lazy mouths, especially from London and stuff. But keeping
Yorkshire, you can't. You know what I mean. We are perfect.
But keeping your accent when you're off camera, I think that can be construed sometimes. I mean, fair enough if you're trying to get the accent, but just keeping that up all the time. When you're months into filming, I guess that could be crossing the line a little bit. I don't know.
To whom are you referring, I wonder, Doug?
Sorry?
To whom are you referring, I wonder, Doug? That is a Band of Brothers in-joke, which we shall no longer go any further to. George, have you got anything? I have something while you think. So I was doing this film years and years and years ago. Jason Fleming was in it. And he had just done this film. I can't remember. He was playing a rock star or something. And he does this really wacky speech in it. And he said,
when I did that, that's another actor actually said that to me, and I thought one day I'm stealing that. And he said that they were all sitting around on set like everybody does, and it got a bit quiet. And this one actor says, "Do you know, I've had a thought, and if the world were to sort of go to shit, and like it just sort of ended, and we were like cavemen, the most important people, the guys that would lead, would be the actors, because we." I can't even do that laughing. We would be the storyteller. We would tell the story. And I was thinking, yeah, I mean, them and the people that could make fire and kill stuff, they'd be quite.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get back. I won't press you.
Yeah, I did want to ask a question. Actually, this one's to Matt as well. Maybe it's like, so, what kind of reception would so this was the first pilot that returned from the 100th. What kind of reception would they have got back home? Like, but as being one of the returning, bomber squadrons, to completing their missions. What was it? Was it 25 or was it missions?
Yeah, it was 25. I mean, you would have gotten a big reception. It would have certainly been like, they were always looking for good news stories in the hometown paper. So this would have been splashed in the hometown paper.
In that time in the war, if it's talking 43, it's not going well, particularly, not for the Western Allies.
Yeah, that would be a huge deal. And then usually it would say something like, Glenn is now home and he's going to be doing X, Y, and Z here at like a stateside base or something like that, and kind of tell what you're up to. But yeah, it would be a big deal.
Yeah.
Was there a war bond drive? Was he put into the war bond drive and stuff?
He didn't go on one of those, but he went on to his next assignment. He went to a B-29 base and was doing some flight instructing, which he did like for the rest of the war. So even though he got home quickly, it was no vacation. He worked steadily in the military until the end of the war.
Wow.
It's not because he got VD again, is it?
That we know of.
Who knows?
That's the strangest motivator I've ever known, but it's quite brilliant.
It works. It works.
It works. Oh, whilst we're still talking to Matt, actually, there is a story I read that when he has a son that he calls Glenn Jr. Is that right? He has a son, Glenn Jr., and he nicknames him. How does that nickname come about?
Yeah, well, his son's nickname was Sonny, so that's what, the pilot kind of at times got first dibs on naming the plane. So Glenn's plane was Sonny, and then there's later a Sonny too. So he got naming rights on that one.
That's really cute. That's fantastic. Well, we'll go back to the beginning anyway, George. Tell us about your casting process, because it's an odd time. It's an odd time. Are we in COVID yet when you're casting? Are you before COVID? Those 2 years were a blank to me, kind of weird.
Yeah.
How did it come up? Did they mention the VD thing? Because I remember going into a casting once, and it was Gary Davey. You know Gary Davey, don't you, Doug?
Yeah.
It was for a show called Strike Back, and he said to me, "Yeah, Matthew, got you in because this show is bombs, boobs, and bullets, and I thought you'd be perfect."
I'm in.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, thanks, mate. Cheers. So anyway, talk us through your casting process. Was it a long one?
No. Well, again, from what I can remember, I remember the tape coming through in lockdown. It must have been early lockdown. I was living in Hackney with my girlfriend at the time. And it was one of those ones where the tape comes through. I think I read for Anto Boyle's role, whose name escapes me now in the show. Who played the main navigator. What's his name in the show?
Harry Crosby.
It'll pop up.
Crosby. I read for Crosby originally, and it was one of those ones where it comes in, you go, there's no way in hell I'm going to get this part, but let's give it my all, go for it. Let's just do a good job and get in front of casting. And then maybe a month or two later, a phone call comes through offering me the part of Glenn Dye from my agent. It was like you remember that tape that you did for, I believe at the time they were calling it like the Band of Brothers, the third Band of Brothers thing. They've offered you a part in it. And it was just the best moment ever, just knowing that and I think that happened. And then 2 days later, I was straight to boot camp. So it stinks of somebody dropping out, but
yeah. So it was quite late. And was it a self-tape? You didn't go, you weren't in a room?
No, it was a self-tape.
Just one. You didn't know recalls, no recalls.
Send it off into the ether, and then it came back, and it's happened a few times in my career. Like you do a tape, you send it off, and then 2 months later, an offer comes in. It's all this stuff's going on in the background that you're just sort of blissfully unaware of.
Yeah.
And this was, literally like, are you available from tomorrow to whenever the end date was? It's
Wow.
like,
No, I'm not. I'm in my
not.
house wearing a mask.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if I'm not, I'll soon change it.
Yeah.
And then it was going from that one extreme to the other. It was going from sort of peak lockdown masks, the walk around the block, to living in a hotel with 30, 40 other actors, and from one extreme right to the other. It was quite a strange.
So that was within days.
Yeah,
of getting the phone call, you were in this hotel
yeah. Without getting into sort of boring industry talk, I think my agent was sort of going back and forth with casting about the deal and what the terms of the contract and stuff. So I was actually a day late to the boot camp, which was even more terrifying. So I turn up, I get my uniform, I get my hair cut, I walk down, and I'm greeted by 50 young actors, all in American accents, asking me like, "What's your name, kid?" I'm like, "George." George. No, what's your what's your character name? They're like, "Okay, we're playing this game, are we?"
Yeah. So you're breaking the fourth wall, George. You're breaking the
It was, yeah. It's like, play along,
That's
bro.
the experience we had, George. Like,
was it really?
We all had to meet up, so it sounds like you did like the first round of boot camps, because there was a lot on your gig. We're understanding there was lots of mini boot camps for cast members that joined later on. But your experience was a bit more like ours, where it was like 50 guys all meeting together within a day of each other for the first time and going on this journey together.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And as a pilot, yours is obviously a very technical boot camp. How did you get on with it? How did you find it?
Yeah, amazingly interesting. Like, I know next to nothing about planes. I'm terrified of flying. Planes freak me out. And genuinely learning the process of effectively starting up a B-17 and the speed it should go and all these things.
So cool.
It was so cool, and it really demystified the process of a plane taking off for me. So if I'm in a plane now, I can sort of hear what's going on noise-wise. Well, that's probably that. That's probably that. That's that going up. That's about this time that you should pull back. It has eased my fear of flying just by knowing that stuff. Not that I could
but a little knowledge is dangerous. That's like having a little medical knowledge, because then every noise you're like, did the alternator just go? Are we about to punch out the guy?
Or dangerous when they say, is there a pilot on board? I go, I did play one in a TV show.
Please don't do that, George.
I promise.
That will be an actor. That will be a wanky actor move.
That's a wanky actor, yes.
Going in the front of 160 passengers and going, I've got this.
You may recognize me. I've got it down.
No,
the last thing they heard. Yes. The last communication was what appeared to be an actor from.
And I can ride a horse.
Just as you're going down. Yeah.
Very, very confusing. Apparently a lovey from Brighton thought he knew how to fly the plane.
There you go. Yeah. So the process was highly technical. I understand that your guys' ones was a lot more physical, I would imagine. A lot more.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, on the ground, like learning all that stuff. Ours was very much like being back at school. It was in like a school gym almost, tiny kids' chairs, notebook, trying to remember. We did a couple of physical things like drills of fires and stuff like that, and we did a couple of like PT sessions with Dale Dye, and but yeah, most of it was with a whiteboard and learning procedures and culture as well. Obviously Dale is like a store of knowledge. So any question you fire at him, he had some reference point to for the culture at the time, even as actors, just learning like, oh, would they have said this, or like this thing, or was this around, and then just list them off. It was a masterclass.
And is that where in the boot camp you got to meet your crew? Did you manage to identify each other? The co-pilots, the navigators, the gunners. Did you kind of meet all those guys there in that boot camp, or?
I actually was kind of the exception to that, I think, because my crew weren't scripted. So, and in the scenes of me flying the plane, it's me and Nikolai playing Huglin.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a crew. Everyone else was in there. It was kind of sad actually. They all had their little gangs and like all their own little songs. I'm just sort of sitting there like, okay, I've got no one. And Nikolai didn't come to the boot camp. So no, I didn't, but I soon assimilated in my own way.
Okay.
I got myself in.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting, yeah.
how'd you find Dale die? Because much as he's a tough guy, Marine dude who'll probably hunt me down and strangulate me for saying this, he's also a bit of a lovey. It sort of surprises me that he's not in the show. And I could just imagine him going to production and being like, I noticed there's a guy called Die in here, and I'm pretty sure I can play Die. And I reckon he angled for it, don't you?
Yeah, I'm surprised not to see him.
Yeah, he loves a bit of it.
It's a shame he didn't find his way in there. He did. When I turned up to boot camp, I sort of sat in the back of this room, again, 50 other actors, and he sort of goes up at the front, he's like, Die, stand up. I'm like, oh, God. I stood up, and he looked at me and was like, Neri, you're not as good looking as me. And he told me to sit back down. I think he must have thought that Dale, Glenn Dye was like part of his family or something, or some sort of military history. But yeah, he's a great guy. Like you say, that tough exterior, but he's got a glint in his eye. It's all like, take this seriously, but also we're here to work really hard. We're not here to hurt anybody, punish anybody. As long as you guys take it seriously and give this the respect it deserves, he's there. We can have jokes, we can laugh about things, and he was amazing collaborator.
I always attributed his glint in the eye to being pissed, but that could be right. Could be wrong.
Could be.
I remember at boot camp, didn't we have to sing Happy Birthday to his daughter? And I think he was absolutely hammered, wasn't he?
Yeah, I always tell that story on the tours we do, and then he stood in front of me and was like, "What the fuck are you looking at?" When I was smirking, we were all singing, and he was queuing down the phone.
I'm sure we did that for his daughter as well. You know,
really?
Yeah,
I'm not sure he was pissed, but I'm sure we sang Happy Birthday for someone for him. His wife,
right?
I can't remember. Yeah, it rings a bell.
What was your first day of filming like? What was your first sequence? What was it like getting on that set? Was you obviously in the aircraft on your first day with all this incredible technology there around it? What was your experience of that? I always want to ask the guys because it seems so phenomenal being up in the plane and stuff.
Yeah, but my first day wasn't up in the plane. That came sort of in the summertime. I think I started around, let's say, March. So it's still quite cold out. I'm trying to think of what my first stuff was. I think it was in a pub. I think, yeah, it was in a pub. I think it's in the second episode, maybe. Everyone's suited and booted, COVID masks on, go into this pub, dimly lit, candles, music. They've got music playing of the era to help give the atmosphere that obviously they stop when they record, but there's to give an atmosphere. There's smoke, there's cigarettes, it's a time machine. It's an absolute time machine. You're walking back into that time, and just, I'm a massive like film nerd. I love it. I love being on set, especially in period stuff where you get to sort of transport yourself as well. I always pinch myself and take a look around and be like, there is nothing here. If I ignore that camera, there is nothing here that wouldn't be here if we were actually in 1943. Like, this is as good as you can get. Everyone's talking the right way. The cigarettes are the same. The ashtrays of the era, and it was extraordinary. And yeah, then the plane stuff came later, and the plane stuff was unbelievable. That piece of technology that they're using, the volume. I'm sure you guys have spoken to people about it, and the rig that was 20 feet up on hydraulics and that kept breaking, which meant that we were there for 2 weeks, I think, when we should have been there for 2 days. The hydraulic suspension would stop and then start pissing oil out of it, and we'd be all waiting on set like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen today, guys. Get the paddling pool out.
Oh wow!
But once it did start working, there was no acting involved. It was purely grin and bear it. The flashes of the flak in your eyes, the jostling of it. It's completely immersive and hot as hell. We had these cooler suits on that were effective for about 2 minutes, and then they would just circulate warm water around your body. So it's almost like you pissed yourself upwards. It was like,
as I do on a daily.
there you go, yeah, as we've all experienced.
Wow.
It
Right.
is George and Doug. I've got a question for you in a second, Matt. Actually, you could probably, all three of us can attest to this. When you're an actor and whether you've been trained or not, and you have these like this, I'm an artist wanky thing going on in your head. 99.9% of the stuff you do isn't all that great. Do you know what I mean? And you're on set and you're doing all the work kind of as an actor, because it's like, I don't know, like the script isn't that great. So like, I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to really like bring it here. And maybe, I don't know, everyone can kind of tell that it's not that great, or the director's not got his heart in it, or it's some film you're doing in bloody Bulgaria that's just for the money. And there is no feeling quite like the sort of pure joy of being on a set where it's the real deal. Where everybody is the best of the best, actors, crew, director, writers, and you're doing something that actually means something. I think we can all attest to that, and it sort of sends, I'm getting tingles up my spine thinking about it, because I can remember that feeling. There's no, like when you were saying, there's, this is exactly like being in a pub in 1943. That feeling for an actor is just so cool. It's so pure. It's so like, you don't really have to bring anything from yourself. It's all, you just have to kind of be. It's, I can't really describe it to anybody who doesn't have a career that's kind of like vocational, but half the stuff you end up doing isn't all that great, that you end up on a set like Band of Brothers, like the Pacific, like Masters of the Air. And it's just such a joy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a completely different, it feels like a different job. It feels like,
does feel like a different job.
It does feel like a different job.
Yeah, it gives the importance to what you do, and even the time frame. I think as actors through COVID, you sort of go, well, people are watching TV and entertaining themselves in this horror. Like there is a use for what we're doing, and especially in stuff like this where you're remembering what these men went through and being a part of that, and you've got, like you say, thousands of people working on this thing who are sincerely giving everything they can to make it as good as it could possibly be. And no one's taking it as like, oh, it's just a job. Oh, yeah, it's just, I'm doing this for 6 months and then I'm moving on to something else. It's like, no, this is it. If you're going to turn up for a fucking job, this is the one to turn up to and pull out the bag. And you see every single person from runners to anybody is doing that. And it's a really special thing. You wish you could have every job be like that, for sure.
Yeah. Because I think it's important for people, because I think when people watch stuff like Master of the Air or Band, they hold it in such high regard. Oh man, it must have been incredible. And sometimes you do a job and people say, oh, that must have been great. And you're like, it wasn't that great. The lead actor was a dick, and the script was rubbish, and I wasn't really enjoying myself and all the rest of it. But those of you who are sort of like huge Masters of the Air fans, which I mean is just growing and growing, or band fans or whatever, it really was as good as you think it was. And it just doesn't get any better. It's just so energizing. Like you can be hungover to hell in mine and Doug's case, or George Khalil's case, or whatever. Like it's so energizing. It's just such an incredible experience to be part of. And nothing ever quite hits that heights again. I'm sorry to tell you this, George. You probably figured that out already.
Yeah, definitely. I remember saying that to some of the younger guys on it, who was their first job out of drama school. And going, guys, it ain't usually like this. It usually feel this special, and every single day you might even just be like, I remember the bicycle scene where we were racing around the base, like we did a rehearsal day before it. Just that we were rocking up in our t-shirts and stuff, just running through the bicycle race. It's just like, this we get to do this for a job. This is brilliant.
Yeah, it's like, I had a similar day on the credit sequence of Band of Brothers riding a motorbike with a sidecar. And I just remember that day, like they're teaching me to ride this 1942 Harley thing with the accelerator all back to front, the gear shift on the tank, and I had a sidecar on it. And you just think, I'm driving on the road. I didn't have a bike license then, just like following a camera car through all these beautiful villages. And you just think, God, I'm doing this for a living. This is what I do for a living. It was absolutely Yeah, it's great days. You know, you really get. I still remember them now, and it's just like, and that's another thing. Like, do you? Because obviously we all played real people, and it's something that I know me and Matthew like. We're really, really proud of it, and it's something that kind of grows as you get older. It gets more important to me now than it was even when I was shooting it, and you know, in an earlier stage of life. Do you
Can
get
I ask you why
kind of
that is? Can I ask you why you feel it's more important now?
I don't know. I think a lot of it is just about what we just said earlier. You know, most jobs you take them because you need to work, you need the money. It is what you do, and the scripts aren't great. The cast, you know, whatever. You know, you're turning up, you're doing a job. Yes, you still enjoy it, whatever. But there's something about band that, you know, the scale of it, when you get the dog tags and it's got the guy's name and the guy's number, and you're like, this guy was really around. Like, I'm representing this guy, you know, and I've still got the dog tags, you know, and they're still my only possession that I really, really value in my life, actually. And also, and as you get further in life, you realize that jobs like that, moments like that, are so rare. As you're obviously, like you say, you were saying this to the younger cast members, like, it's not always going to be like this. In fact, you're probably going to be very fortunate if you ever experience this again, which is true. And also, you know, like me and Matt were still, I mean, this is 25 years ago, and we still got a WhatsApp group, and these guys are like such dear friends, you know, heartfelt friends. You know, we always look out for one another. You know, a lot of us have had really, really rough times, and all the other guys are always there to back us up. You know, and that's something that you just value. That I just value more than anything. You know.
And I would say, George, risking dipping my toe into the puddle of actor wankerism, when you're doing like a film or a TV job, like it's quite cold. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no audience or anything, so you don't really get feedback or anything. But since sort of band came out, and then since like I run this and we do tours and you meet people and social media is a thing now, the amount of feedback that we get, the amount of, like, you've got 17-year-old kids who are reenacting the guy that, you know, you played, and then you've got this whole, your family members, and the guys have like passed on, but the younger family members, and even the younger family members are coming at you and, you know, saying thanks for doing this, and we're doing this, and do you want to come to this? And there's like, it's just incredible the amount of sort of base level just interest and just kind of like love of that show, and then everything that it spawned afterwards, and all this history and people getting into it and people understanding it. Like, when I was a kid, I was always a history nut, always a history, like A-level history and all the rest of it. But it was always, you know, words on a page and broad, and, you know, this general did this, and, you know, these guys did this. What band did was to sort of like, it purified it down to just like the grunt on the floor. Do you know what I mean? It was the actual guys, and how we all talk to each other now, and how we banter, and how the WhatsApp group banters. And it just, that's what hit home to people, is like, hey, this was my granddad. He was just, I can't believe he was that type of guy, and he did this. And I think it's become latterly really quite sort of precious and important to myself and all the guys, that we just sort of curate it in the right way still. Do you know what I mean? And
It'll
then
be with you forever, George.
yeah, it will be. It will be with you guys forever as well. And the same thing will happen. And I've said this to everybody who's sort of come on from Masters, and they're all amazingly, really cool, smart guys. I mean, we as We Happy Few, we are running 2 tours, one in September and one in January. One a Rose's Riveters tour, and one with the Alice in Dallas guys. And it's sold in 20 minutes, both of them, like that. Wow. Like, people from around the world. From around the world, just shoot, yes, they're there. Our pre-sale, we had a pre-sale before the sales, and that sold out. Like, people they waited for 10 years for the book to get made into a show. I might be wrong here, Matt, but I think it's about 10 years for the book to be made, and they were obsessed about it before the show came out. There's that much level of interest. And now what will happen is, with all these sort of tour companies that sort of spawned out of sort of Band of Brothers, all these guys who started to do Band of Brothers in Carontown or The Bulge or, Arnhem and all this stuff, the same thing will happen with Masters of the Air. And as time goes on, you're going to get more and more people going, hey, do you want to come on this tour? Can you come and talk about the show? Can you do this? And they're into the minutiae of it, like the absolute minutiae. Like the last tour I did a Q&A on the bus, and it was like a random Band of Brothers facts Q&A. And there were people putting their hand up before I'd finished the sentences and correcting as well. Like they just know absolutely every little thing about it, which reminds me, Doug, did you know this? You know Alex Sabga?
Yeah.
He dies, Mellet dies in episode 7. He's killed in episode 7 by a sniper, I think, after the attack on Foy. He's actually in episode 10 when we're all on parade. It actually cuts to him for a second. And I didn't know this. One of the guys on the bus pointed this out.
Really?
I don't think Alex knew it either. I was like, did you know that you're also in episode 10 for a second, even though you died 3 episodes previous?
Well, I don't remember that. I'll have to watch Ep 10 again to have a look.
Oh, it's just come up. He also played Rogers in episode 1. So it was almost like a theatre piece as far as Alex was concerned. Playing multiple characters. So it's that's the sort of level of it's just such a great affirmation when most of the stuff you do, you don't get any affirmation. And you just know from what you were talking about being on set and how important it is, it's just like it just feeds into the fact that, dang it, I might have fudged up everything else in my life, but this has some meaning and it's not going away. And I've always got that. And it's really important. It's really important to stay friends with all the guys. It's really important to not be overwhelmed by the amount of love and interest you'll get from other people, because it's not the same as some creepy dude on Facebook asking you for a drink. It really is like, and I do get that a bit. It really is honest, true love of what you've done and the real guy that you played.
Have you experienced any of that yet, George? Have you experienced like the sort of groundswell of affection that fans are having, and obviously relatives of the guys that you portrayed? Like you say, you've been in touch with, was it your co-pilot? He's still around. I mean, that's what an amazing thing to have. What did that feel like when you was in touch with him? I mean, that sounds nuts to me.
It was nuts. Yeah, it was. I think I was possibly the only actor that I know of on it that was pen pals with a guy that was doing it for real. And I told everybody that would listen that, from the hair to anybody. I was like, yeah, I'm emailing Lucky, don't worry about it.
Lucky, yeah.
Just go. Here's Lucky again. He won't leave me alone now. Yeah. And there was when the show came out. I've never had a show. People that I know even just not expecting to see me in it. People who I haven't seen since school being like, I was just watching, I just saw you in it. People that you'd be like, I didn't know this was your sort of show, that you'd even watch this. But it hits a demographic that I had no idea was there. I thought the military buffs, but it expands beyond that. There's a real appetite for audiences, I think, maybe now more than ever, feeling like we need to really know what happened then, so it either doesn't happen again, or at least give the modern military, the respect that it deserves and doesn't always get, especially in the UK. I think. There was messages from some family of Glenn's, and again, people who were ex-military servicemen themselves saying, love the show, remember pilot, sending messages. Like it touches people in a way that, like you say, a normal TV show doesn't do. People can be fans of a show, but when something carries, they say, I've got my dog tags up there, Doug, the same as you. Like, you're carrying part of these people's legacy with you from a show like this, and that isn't something to be smirked at or sort of shrugged at.
You can't be glib about it, can you? Yeah.
No, for sure.
And you're dead right that I do still have that question for you, Matt. Please don't go away. You're dead right about the odd demographic. It seems to touch everybody. That sort of show seems to touch everybody that you can think of. And the most unlikely people. There's a guy. I'm up a mountain, like kind of living off grid, and there's a guy that comes and goes, and his name's Sean, and he's the coolest guy. He's got like long hair, and I don't know where he lives. I think he lives in a cave or something. And he came up one time. He's like, "Dude, I've got this kind of snake, and I found it, and it's kind of, it was in my space, but like, dude, I can't. It's like a copperhead, you know, really poisonous." He's like, I can't kill it, and like, you've got all this land, and I'm wondering whether like I can release it, and like, you know, it can live here. And I was like, no, Sean, you can't release a poisonous snake in a 10-month-old baby. But thanks for asking. And then he's like, no, dude's fine. It's totally cool, man. It's fine. Hey, man, were you in Band of Brothers? I freaking love it. You know, I was like, what? Yeah. He's like, and I was talking about like, yeah, I'm doing these podcasts. I'm getting the Masters. Oh, dude, Masters of the Air is awesome. Man, that show, like, guys like that, you know, snake saving hippie.
Unbelievable.
It means something to them. It's like, I watch it with my dad. Like, me and my dad, we don't have a great relationship, but we can watch that. And which is another, you know, that's, I think that's quite
nuts. Yeah.
It's a show you can sit and watch with your dad that you don't really get on with, because it's something that you can both think, man, you know, but for the grace of God, go either me or you. Do you know what I mean? We were just born at the right time.
But that was the strange thing for us, and I think you're going to find this as well, George, is that, you know, obviously the show's been out, it's been a big success and whatever, but the you know, people coming up to you records, it grows.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It was almost like more so 10 years after the show had come out that there was a whole new generation of young people that watch it. And again, 20 years after it came out, there's another younger generation kind of watching it and getting into it. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's not a one-time thing. I mean, there's so many jobs I did in the end of the 90s and the noughties and TV shows on the BBC or whatever, that they play once, they never get played again. No one cares about them, whatever. But this just runs and runs and runs. And Masters is going to be exactly the same. Exactly the same. Yeah, it's a great thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got the question from Matt. All right, because otherwise we're just going to keep waffling. And I said I had a question for him 25 minutes ago. Matt, so with Lucky, did he ever watch the show?
He did, yeah, he did. He actually saw it at the premiere out in LA, so he was one of the lucky few.
Yeah, always lucky. What was his reaction to it?
He was impressed, and I'll say I think my best story about that is it kind of came full circle. You have George talking to him during the production, and then Lucky had his 102nd birthday earlier this year, and George was kind enough to do a video for him. And so I think he had never put two and two together that like that was you at the time of what you looked like. So when I showed him the video at his party on my laptop, his face was just beaming. He was like, "That's the guy I talked to him. Yes, I remember all this." So it's hard to impress the guy's 102, but it meant a great deal to him that you had reached out, and he was impressed. He said he felt like he was back in the cockpit seeing some of these sequences. So you guys were impressive for sure.
Wow,
that's incredible.
How does that make you feel, George?
Yeah, unbelievable. Like, again, a guy like that, the word hero is thrown around so much, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
Celebrity, even like it's above that. It's a real life fucking Rambo action hero being like, hey, that guy. It's amazing. Yeah, I think, unbelievable.
Yeah, but yeah, because that was sort of the thrust of my question was like, how realistic did he find it, Matt? I think, and if you're saying it was like he was being back in the cockpit, that must have been quite a surreal experience for him, 80, 90 years ago, to have it sort of brought to life in front of him on a big screen in Los Angeles. It's the craziest thing. Imagine someone bringing to life the most sort of harrowing moments of your life, and they just sort of bring it to life in like 80 years time, and there's some young 6'2" handsome guy playing, in the cockpit who's English. It's just it's the maddest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I also there's a story that I just remembered that Lucky told me about, because he was Glenn's co-pilot, but he finished at a different time to Glenn. He was a couple missions behind, and the way that I remember it is that when the flight command, when Huglin comes and sits in that co-pilot seat, the co-pilot takes the gunner seat, And Lucky did it once and was like, I ain't doing that again. For the way that Lucky tells you, like, I'm not doing it again. So if someone else is fighting on that seat, I'm sitting out or taking another position or something. He was like, I'm not going up there in that gunner seat again. And so he was a few missions behind Glenn, the way that Lucky told it. Which that's what I just remembered.
He was just one of the most erudite human beings, Lucky Luckadoo. I mean, he came on our podcast and just spoke for like an hour. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, again, another storehouse of knowledge and
just sharp as a tank.
Yeah,
sharp as an absolute tank.
Yeah.
I need 15 coffees and I'm like, half the age and some more. Yeah, it's incredible mind. What was your most memorable scene to shoot? And why was that?
There's one scene in particular that didn't make the show. That Cary Fukunaga, the director of episodes 1 to 4, was writing stuff on the day and being like, let's try this. It was on a production of that scale to have that freedom to be like, let's try this thing out. Let's do this thing. And in one of the diner scenes, there was a sequence where he wrote that morning, me, him, and Nikolai, about my journey through the VD thing, and it was in a banquet hall. And I remember specifically there was a camera move. This is, again, probably boring to people who aren't actors, but there was quite a complex camera move where someone comes and whispers in my ear. I then have to look over at the commander, look at him, go, okay, stand up as the camera's tracking, and then move at the right time. And I was so nervous, obviously. Like, everyone's in this banquet hall, 100 actors, 500 essays, madness. And I wasn't quite getting the movement right on the thing. So I went around it. I was like, Cary, show me the shot. Show me what you're trying to get. As soon as he showed it to me, I was like, I know what it is. I know what you're trying to get. And so we did it one more time, and that flow state of like when everything just works perfectly, and it Cary's really good at sort of, as you've seen in the show, like these tracking shots that just go on for ages, and everything just worked like music, and it just was a real moment as an actor where you go, that is why I do it. This is the fun stuff. This is like complex camera moves, timing, performance, dialogue. It all just worked seemingly together. And that was like a really personal moment to me of like overcoming the fear of it, of performing in front of this many people in a film job like that. That really stands out as a personal moment. And then another one was sort of the big picture one. It's when we're loading into the jeeps and the vans in order to go on our first mission, and we're filming it at sunset, which I believe they were doubling for sunrise. And I mean, the amount of people there, again, 300 essays, 10 trucks, a jeep, a bike, and you're looking at all of it, and you're just like, this, how much money is this hour?
Yeah.
We had quite a few. They're the sequences that I remember as well, George.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, we had a lot of those on band, obviously being a ground war with 200 German essays as well, and Panzer half tracks and whatever German tanks and stuff in the distance, as well as all of our stuff. And then you just take a moment, and as far as the eye could see, it's real. As far as the eye could see, it's real. I have quite a few images of that in my head of just standing there and going, wow, it's just,
Most notably is the German surrender in episode 9, where they literally, I think they had 2,000 essays, which I should say means special abilities extras. I won't tell you what we actually called them because I don't think it's correct. I think they had 2,000 guys in uniform, German guys in uniform, marching up and down that runway.
Wow.
I think they quintupled it to make it look like 10,000 in post. And I told the story before.
2,000 wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. 2,000 wasn't enough. I took a friend of mine who was a director that day because I wasn't shooting, because they were just shooting the German surrender up on a gantry, a bridge that went across. And he was mesmerized because the whole bridge was just bouncing as these guys were marching in unison down. It was an incredible incredible moment. And he's just like,
you don't get those anymore in production. You know, it's all
No, you don't.
would be done digitally. There was no reason to do it apart from it's the best thing to do. And I've got a theory that it holds no proof, but the prevalence of AI and what that is going to do to visual effects is going to make that so much easier that I have a feeling that Hollywood are going to go back to the golden age of like, you know what, let's get 2,000 extras for this scene and we can publicize that look, we did this for real in camera. The fact that everyone assumes everything's going to be AI and just done within a computer is going to have any value. When you know that Tom Cruise has jumped off the mountain on a bike, it means something. And I think the same thing with stuff like this. It's like you got 2,000 SAs as Germans there surrendering. That is a marketable scene to shoot. Like
Ben-Hur.
Yeah,
they did it on Ben-Hur, didn't it? 7,000 extras. Those extras they've never used. Yeah,
exactly. Like you would, if you saw a movie that was like they had 10,000 extras do this battle scene in Roman epic, you'd be like, I'm going to watch that. I want to see how they did that. I want to hear that story.
So that's the kind of beauty of doing like B movies out in Eastern Europe is that they do a lot of enhanced practical, they call it, like the stunts and the explosions and stuff, and they have bodies on the ground because they're cheap, and you know the post stuff, the AI stuff, super expensive. You know, you have to get hundreds of technicians sitting for thousands of hours on computer screens, and it is like, it does feel old school, and it does feel, you know, I call it movie magic, you know, when you get these moments like you were just describing, when you just turn around and everything you see is like, we had a lot of scenes in the early episodes, I think, you know, going through Holland. Do you remember when when we're sort of liberating the locals, and literally we're in this, which was a set of an entire high street, wasn't it? And with roads going off it and just hundreds of people in civilian. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Eindhoven. Yeah,
it was just, and you just look at everywhere you looked, you were there, you were completely there. I loved all that stuff, and for it to go, you do lose a little bit. You lose something in the eyes, you know, with the actors, because obviously they're not in the situation, sort of thing. You know what I mean? I kind of feel.
Yeah, because they're looking at an X on a stick by a green screen.
Yeah.
Can't even
So
get your eye line.
How have things been going since?
Yeah, good. It was strange. COVID was sort of my busiest time as an actor. I don't know if all my competition died off or something, but I went from Masters into a show called Wedding Season, which was on Disney Plus. It was like their first British show. And then I had a show come out earlier this year called The Doll Factory that is out and about somewhere at some point. But I mean, the past few months have been incredibly quiet. I don't know if you guys can attest to that.
Yeah.
The industry's in a strange spot, and a lot of my friends are out of work. I've got some voiceover jobs which are sort of keeping me going, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But it's a really hard time. A lot of my friends that are on crew that like are really struggling to find productions, and I think
it's a weird time, isn't it? I've spent a bit of time out of the business, and I'm just speaking to my agent about coming back in, and which would be, I'm really excited about. Well, kind of, you know, getting back to doing self tapes and stuff, and hopefully land something next few months. And yeah, I've been hearing the same thing for a lot of our friends, mine and Matthew's friends that are normally working, just not working. It's a very strange time, and I don't quite understand it, because especially with the broadcasters, you know, this platform thing, subscription platforms, you know, streaming. They have to have content, otherwise their model fails. But I think, you know, they buy a lot of old shows and you know, redo them or whatever, or the shows seem to go to the same people. I don't know quite what it is, but yeah, it's always been a little bit like that. You know, a bit of feast and famine.
It was one of those like perfect storms. You had the actors' strike last year.
That's right.
Really affected stuff over here in the UK. And there wasn't really a bounce back from that. And now I believe the video game actors are striking in America. And so that's affecting that part of the industry. And I think I think it's probably investment wise, if you're a private investor, it's looking like a risky industry at the moment.
Yeah,
It's
I think that's a
like,
big thing that yeah. I think that's a really good observation, George. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll
So
see.
job investors.
Yeah, come on, investors. Yeah,
Come on, chop, do
let's get a
Get
fourth
your money.
series.
Get your checkbooks out. Well, listen, Geordie, we've had you for about an hour. Sorry, this is your friends, by the way, this is your friends from Masters of the Air, the guys that are coming on the tour, keep WhatsApping.
Are they badgering you?
Riley and stuff are just badgering me. Yeah. I don't know. You just, God, those guys, Masters guys. We subhead rather our podcast, The Nearly Men. Is there a nearly story you can tell me? We've had some from your Masters guys. A nearly story is something that you could nearly have been. So maybe 5 years ago, you could nearly have been Spider-Man. Maybe 20 years ago, you could nearly have been a Metropolitan Police officer. 2 years ago, you could nearly have been in prison. Is there I hope not. Is there a nearly story you could share with us?
Yeah, it wasn't that near, but when I was about 22, I remember filling in an online application form to join the army as an officer to try it. I don't think I had the right GCSEs. But I remember sending it off and getting like an email or a phone call back from a guy. I was like, oh no, this is terrifying now. I can't do this. So it would have been nearly if I wouldn't have chickened out. Acting wise, I was nearly, I think I've told this story before. And again, it wasn't that nearly because it was, well, I don't know. I was like 3 or 4 rounds into Star Wars, The Force Awakens, when episode 7, when that was first going in its first iteration. I believe, I think it was Michael Arndt who was directing it and writing it at that time before J.J. Abrams came on. And I was like 3 or 4 auditions deep on that, feeling like it's my destiny.
Yeah.
Like I have, you can probably see up there, my 2 lightsabers.
Oh wow.
A huge. I was like, this is my destiny. This has got to happen, and then it didn't. So that nearly happened, but was also pretty early on in my career, and there was no way I knew what I was doing to have done that. So it was, again, it's one of those things where you look back in hindsight and go, thank God that nearly.
But what brought the joining the army thing on? Do you have family in the military or?
Well, my dad actually joined the army when he was in the cadets. So I think he joined at 16 or 17 back in the 80s or whatever for a grand total of 2 weeks. I believe he'd signed like the 2-year term, and his mum had to come and get him and be like, he's not staying.
Wow.
Went,
okay. He's a very naughty boy.
Yeah, literally. So and my granddad, my dad's dad, is a massive history buff and sort of always had war documentaries on. So I've always been fascinated by the military, and it's one of those. It's maybe not every boy's dream, but I would have loved to have gone down that route if I hadn't have gone down this route. I'm not sure I ever had the bottle to do it, but as a fantasist, I definitely would have loved that. But yeah, no surviving members of my family are military men. And I even believe my great granddad managed to get out of the war by breaking his own arm on purpose in a car door. So that's my genetic lineage of just scoundrels and scallywags. I ain't going.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Scoundrels and scallywags.
Yeah. All of us are the same, I think.
Yeah, I think we are, yeah. Anyway.
We've had you for an hour. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very, very much for coming on. It's been really nice talking to you.
Not at all. It's lovely to meet you guys, and hopefully we get to meet each other in real life at some point.
Yeah. I'd love that, George.
Very
for
cool.
Sure. You should come on a tour. Come on a tour, George. You're
one of our an invite. I'll be there.
Fantastic. All right, dude.
All right. Take care, George.
Take care. Speak again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, another nice fella from Masters.
Yeah, I was about to say, another delightful, intelligent, erudite young man.
Can't we just get one dick? One stupid dick for one. They're
one
all
twat.
so smart. Yeah, one absolute absolute whammer. What a lovely man. It was really nice talking to him. They're so smart and erudite and clever and good looking and thin. It's just sickening.
It is,
sickening.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, all right, fella. I guess we'll draw this one to a close.
Yeah. Been lovely to see you. And
lovely to you too. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will catch you again next week, wherever next week is, depending on when the pod drops and how you get it. If you fancy it, go over and sign up for our Patreon. We really appreciate the support. And you do get the podcast a bit earlier than everybody else and a bit of extra content when we put it on there. So thanks very much for listening. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.